Welcome to another episode of the Tech Transfer Podcast. I'm Dave Brown. I'm here today with Andrew Krauss from InventRight. We're going to have a great, fresh perspective on how to help inventors commercialize their technologies. Andrew's been at this for 25 years plus and is a co-founder of InventRight. You want to introduce yourself for a second, Andrew, and kind of tell us what your organization's all about?
Yeah. So I co-founded an organization called InventRight 25 years ago, and our mission is to mentor and coach people with ideas. They may or may not call themselves an inventors and small companies to license their products. A lot of people don't know what the word licensing means. It means to, I know you know, Dave, but a lot of people don't. They're new to the concept. When you license a product, so let's say you got a dog toy and you license it to a company selling dog toys, and that company is in PetSmart and Petco and Walmart and Target. It doesn't have to be a dog toy. It might be a medical device. It might be an automotive product. It could be anything. But when you license to that big company, you kind of are that big company. So you don't need to raise money. It's their money. You don't need to hire employees. It's their employees. Maybe they have 500. I mean, I had one of our coaches license something to a company, and they had, I think, 15,000 products.
Oh,
So you don't need to raise money. It's their money. You don't need to hire employees. It's their employees. And you're tapping into their existing distribution. So if they're in 30,000 stores, you can be in 30,000 stores. So you're tapping into that machine that's already
mhm.
there, is the way I put it. And that's what we've been coaching and mentoring people to do for the last 25 years. And we've had students in over 65 countries.
Well, and licensing helps with valuation too, right? Because if I'm an inventor or however I got a hold of a technology, sometimes I'll wonder how much is this worth? And you really don't have to know. If you just charge a reasonable royalty, it's all going to work out, right?
There you go. Yeah, I was gonna say people are like, how do I value the idea? It's like whatever somebody will pay you. One of the things when you get a licensing deal on the table with a big company is you interview them quite a bit, as much them as they are you, about what they're going to do with the product. So you could calculate this is harder to do these days because a lot of online sales these days. But let's say they were in 30,000 stores. They're like, oh, I think we can get in this and this and this retailer. Let's say that was 30,000 stores. Well, if you figured 1 unit per week per store, you could go, I'm going to be pretty happy with that, right? So it's whatever deal you can get on the table. You do need to evaluate what they can do with it, but just to give a general valuation of a product, that you're not raising funds. This is not venture slash vulture capital. I joke about
Yeah.
vulture capital. Um, you, you're going to have a feel for it, and you can decide if this is a big deal or a small deal. It could be a really big company that has great plans for your product, or maybe smaller plans. It could be a medium-sized company that's got big plans. You got to evaluate the deal, and then you'll know how big it is. And then they won't necessarily perform, but if they don't, you're never selling your invention. You never want to say two things. I want to sell you my idea, or I want to sell you my patent. You never want to say that. When you're licensing, you're renting or leasing them the product. If they don't perform under the terms of the licensing contract, then you can take it back. Now, you don't want to get into a deal that you know isn't going to work out. Most deals do work out, but some don't, you know?
Yeah, and around here, we like startup companies. We launch a lot of startup companies, but that is a hard thing to do. You've got to learn business, finance, accounting, legal, everything. And here, licensing, you can just be the inventor, the creator, and have someone else do it, which is great. So let me ask you about how you help people. I know you provide a couple services. One is traditionally you do coaching, so I'd love to hear about that. But then I'm very intrigued that now you're offering kind of a marketing for professional sort of service too, right?
Yeah, only for like the last 5 or 6 months, we resisted offering doing it for the inventor, everything, for 25 years. And
Okay.
we have reasons for that. There's companies that do that and don't do it in an ethical way. And so we've always avoided that, but we've decided to start doing it and doing it in an ethical way. But historically, we've coached and mentor inventors, and they're on with their coach every week, and they can email them anytime. These days, we do it for an entire year because most of the people that we help, they are obsessed with one current product. When I say obsessed, that's not a bad thing. That's what they're really focused on. Maybe they spent money on a patent or they're really focused on it. But when I ask them, do you have other ideas? They're like, oh yeah, I got 100 or I got five. Or yeah, I have other ideas, but I'm not writing them down. I'm just focusing on this now. And go, great, because once you go through the process to license and you experience every aspect of licensing to a big company, and then you dump it on them and it's on them, right? Um, you can do that over and over and over again. So our business over the last 25 years has always been empowering that creative person or that small company that can then license the product rather than starting a business.
Has it been tempting for you to take a piece of the action, try to get a percentage of their royalty? I know you charge a fee, and I think you do it for ethical reasons, but what made you decide that?
That we don't take a percentage?
Yeah,
Yeah, that I got a whole spiel on that. I
yeah,
could go into it a little bit. One, because and when I talk about companies that don't do things ethically for inventors, I'm not talking about the companies you license to. I'm not talking about that company in Walmart or that medical device company that you're going to license your new scalpel to. I'm not talking about them. I'm talking about the companies that prey upon new green inventors or small companies that think you have a great idea and now, oh, I just need you guys to do it for me. And so what some of those companies do, they typically charge like $10,000 to $15,000. And I'm not stating any names because I would never do that. They kind of pretend to work on the idea for an entire year. And what they do, it's like a messed up confidence game. They'll say, we want 20% of your invention. They're never going to, they couldn't license their way out of a paper bag and they don't really try. So what they really want is that 10 or 15,000. And they say they want a percentage of the royalties as a way to make you believe that they care about you and your product. And these are like invention marketing companies. The Federal Trade Commission, the Patent Office warns against them. And so I do think that's something I don't want to spend too much time talking about it,
sure.
but I do think it's something important to mention because if you're like, I got a great idea, oh, there's this company that I saw on TV or whatever, and I'll just go with them, be very wary and do your research before you do that.
Yeah.
So
And so,
only one of the reasons why we don't take a percentage because they do that.
yeah.
And also another reason is when we coach and mentor people, they get unlimited negotiation support for a year. So I don't want somebody to go, oh, well, I'm getting close to closing this deal, but I won't call Paul, the negotiation coach, to help me finalize it because if I don't tell them,
Uh,
then maybe I can keep that 20%. I want them to just ask for anything all the time, really be there for them. That's another reason. I got a couple other little reasons
okay.
too, but it's a good
Now
question.
that makes a
Sorry,
lot
it's
of
a
sense.
loaded question. You didn't know
That
that.
makes a lot of sense. And
Yeah.
I've seen infomercials for those other sorts of entities that you would want to avoid being. Your approach is so completely different. There's one way to see it is your partner Stephen Key wrote that book, One Simple Idea, which kind of lays out a
Yeah.
lot of principles. But
Yeah.
if you personally are talking to a new inventor, what would you tell them? What are kind of the steps of the process?
Uh, the first thing you should do is not run out and get a patent ever, 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 ever. So now most people don't do this, but I was on with some of our students just the other day, and I was talking about the first thing that you do when you come up with an idea. Preferably, almost nobody does this. Don't think about it for even days or weeks or months. Instantly get on Google Images, search up other products in that space. Oh, but there's nothing like it. So the longer you go without doing your market research, the more in love you fall with the product and the more you have blinders on to see what's really out there. I can't tell you how many inventors I've talked to on the phone where they tell me I've been doing this for 25 years. So they can give me a terrible verbal description and I know exactly what they're talking about. Somebody else will be like, I don't understand, but I get it. I understand. Um, and I look it up and I just do a Google image search is the greatest place, I think.
Okay.
Just one of many, but um, and I'll find it in like 10 seconds, you know. Now here's also another misnomer with that. People think that when they do their market research, what they're trying to prove is there's nothing like their product. That's not what you're trying to prove at
Yeah.
all. If you're doing kitchen cutting boards, you're looking at the space, the micro category of kitchen cutting boards. You're not looking at all kitchen products, it'd be overwhelming. You're looking at kitchen cutting boards, you go, well, this one of these benefits, these one of these benefits, the price points, all that stuff. And you're going, this is like marketing 101. Most people with ideas don't do this. Where does mine fit in? And do I need to make some tweaks? So does it fit in the marketplace? Going to a patent attorney doing a patent search should never, ever, 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 did I say that enough times? Be the first thing that an inventor does. There's plenty of patent attorneys that will readily take your money, but what is or isn't in the marketplace tells you a lot. If you find some like five things that are kind of similar, that verifies as a market, and you be like, well, but I have a point of difference, right? That tells you a lot if something's in the marketplace that's kind of in that space. Not just because it isn't doesn't mean it's not a good idea, but people can patent all sorts of stuff. And the only thing a patent verifies is that you're paying for your patent attorney's kids' college education. It doesn't mean it's a smart product. It doesn't mean that it's marketable. Doesn't mean that it's manufacturable. Doesn't mean that it's manufacturable at a reasonable price. So people think like falsely, and invention marketing companies and patent attorneys prey on this. Well, if I did a patent search, I didn't find anything, therefore everything is good. Well, that doesn't mean everything is good. And in addition, it's craziness to spend $10,000 on a patent or whatever. You can spend more or less, and you don't even know if there's anybody's interested yet. If you file a provisional patent for $65, we give our students some software we developed with a patent attorney to do that. You pay patent office $65. You've got a provisional patent. You can say patent pending. Don't even need to say provisional patent pending. And you've got this perceived protection for an entire year. Now, if you know how to license, you don't need a year to reach out to companies. So, and what if a change needs to be made? If you spent $10,000 on a patent and now you talk to a company, they're like, we like this, but we don't like that. And you're like, oh crap, I didn't cover that in my patent. I'm gonna spend another $10,000. If you spend 65 on a provisional patent, which anybody can write in common English, you could spend another 65 on another provisional. Then later you could file a full utility, get the company to pay for that patent, and then reference those provisionals. Sorry, I know I'm talking a
Well,
million
no,
miles an hour.
this is fantastic. And I tell people, well, first of all, I usually go to Amazon to look for the competing products. And yeah, most products exist. And then on the patenting point, like I always tell people, just be strategic with your patenting. You should be able to explain to people, why am I investing money in this? And if you go all the way to issuance, you're probably talking about $25,000. And so especially as a solo inventor, I think your strategy is to control costs. So filing a
Yeah.
provisional patent application makes all kinds of sense.
Yeah, I mean, for $65, and Pete, your audience may be shocked to hear this, but you don't have to say on your marketing materials or in your video or your sell sheet, we call them sell sheets, one
Yeah.
page marketing pieces. You don't have to say provisional patent pending. You can say patent pending. It creates an aura of professionalism for $65. And it's not a patent. It's actually, patent attorneys are right on this. It's a provisional patent application, but it's a stake in the sand that if you later file a full utility within a year, you can reference and preserve that filing date on that provisional. So like, why wouldn't you do it? But everybody runs out to patent attorneys. It's the first thing they think of. And that's in one area which you shouldn't follow Uncle Bob's advice.
Yeah.
It's great when family and friends are encouraging. They're like, that's a great invention. And their common advice is paranoid. You better get a patent on that. And it's like, well, what has Uncle Bob licensed or ventured before? He doesn't know what the hell he's talking about. You should
Yeah.
be flattered that he thinks it's so great you should get a patent. Be flattered by that, but please
Mhm.
don't take the advice. Now, I'm not saying it's not legal advice, people. I'm not saying don't
Sure.
get a patent. I'm saying get a provisional, go fishing, and then if you get interest, get them to give you the money to file the patent. Because when you do a licensing agreement, they're not going to file the patent. You are, but they can give you an advance on royalties. And so think about the limited budget you can have when you take this approach. But even if you don't have a limited budget, you should still take the same approach. I don't care if you're a multimillionaire, you should still take the same approach. I mean, unless you just enjoy throwing money out the window.
And one of the things I love about your InventRight approach, so like you say, there's kind of this paranoid pressure to protect your idea when you have something you think is valuable. And you've
Right.
made the point many times that, look, even if you talk to major corporations and you have no protection, they know you're a naive inventor or whatever, most people aren't going to steal from you, right?
I haven't had a single one of our students. We've had students in over 65 countries, over 25 years.
Mhm.
I've never had a single one that had an idea stolen from a potential licensee that they showed to in
Yeah.
25 years. Will it happen one day? Yeah, it'll happen one day. It hasn't happened yet.
Yeah.
The best form of protection is not patents. It's conducting yourself professionally. So let's say this fictitious scenario. Let's say you're talking to Sally and she kind of likes your product. She's a marketing manager at this company. And Bob, her CEO at the company she works for, is unethical. I'll call him unethical CEO Bob. Okay.
Yeah.
And Sally goes to Bob and says, hey, Bob, this is a cool product. I think we should license this. And Bob's like, ah, why should we pay this inventor? I don't. And she might say, this is a fictitious scenario. She might say, well, Bob, you know, um, I know we could do that, but I think this would be a liability in this case. Remember that wacky inventor from like a year ago? Yeah, we could do that to him. But this guy's asking smart questions. He seems to really know what he's doing. I think that would be a liability. He's got patent pending status. I think we should either license this or we should move on. So now I don't know if that actual conversation's ever happened, but when we mentor somebody and they're doing and saying all the right things and not saying things like everybody will want it or we'll make millions together or there's nothing like it, those are like three things you guys should never ever say. But when you're not saying that stuff and you're easy enough to talk to on the phone, you don't need to be a captain of industry. You just need to not be saying wacky stuff. Then I think that's the reason why none of our students have been ripped off in 25 years,
Mhm.
you know?
Yeah, fantastic. So you coach them to file a provisional patent application. Why not create a sell sheet? And you have your YouTube channel. I started watching probably 4 years ago. It's fantastic, and you talk about what sell sheets are, how you can work that up. People should go check that out on YouTube. And then next, you have to identify companies to market to. How do people decide who to
Yes.
approach?
Yeah, most people will just go like with the three companies right in their face at the local store.
Mhm.
Um, it depends on the category. In some categories, you might only have 8 or 12, but most of the time it's 20 or 30. And people don't look at it right. They don't need to be making let's say you got a garlic press. They don't even have to be making a garlic press. Maybe they're making other kitchen gadgets, and they're like garlic presses are kind of generic, but if they saw your garlic press, they might want to do a garlic press, right? So sometimes people go, oh, if they're not selling that exact same thing, they're not right for me. Now, people do the opposite thing too. They just hear a company's open to ideas and they're just spamming them with stuff. And it's like the inventor needs to look at the product line and go, does this fit in with their product line? And you'd be amazed. We've gone on YouTube and done shows, interviews with companies that said they were open to ideas, and they told us to shut it down. These are not our students. This is the public, our YouTube show
Right.
where anybody can watch it, right? And they're like, we even said specifically, like, please look at their product line, make sure it's a right match before you submit. And they're just people spam them with all sorts of products. And they're like, this isn't remotely
Okay.
appropriate for a product line. So that's a good way to burn a bridge as an inventor. Our members don't
Mhm.
do that, but the public that just watches our YouTube show can do that sometimes. And that's why we don't really bring those companies to the YouTube show anymore, you
Yeah,
know?
and um, okay, yeah, that makes sense. So the process is really, really clear, and you help people with your consulting with coaching. You help them find the right companies. I know you have a database of companies that take submissions like this.
Yeah, and I think that's cool, but we teach people to do it from scratch.
Okay.
So if you've got this dog toy, this kitchen cutting board, or this medical device, we show them how to study the marketplace and find the proper potential licensees. I'll give you the basics of it. I mean,
Mhm.
if a company is making products in the category you want to be in, that your product is in, and they're in a major retailer, you should be reaching out to them. So if they're making kitchen cutting boards and you see them in Target or Walmart, or they're making something adjacent or in the same category as kitchen cutting boards, and you have a kitchen cutting board, you should be reaching out to them. It's not exactly rocket science. But here's the thing. People, they just go with the retailers near them. Like I had this student once and he had a sporting good product. I'm on the West Coast, he's on the East Coast. And I said, rattle off a name of a few sporting good retailers. He did. I rattle off a name of a few. We didn't know of either of ours. They were both very different. So you can't always, not always this easy, but I Googled list of major US sporting good retailers and I came across a Wikipedia article and there was a ton of retailers that neither of us had ever heard of. So you have to hit all the major retailers, which you can do online for the most part, and then figure out, and you'll see like a repeat, like, oh, I saw this company making a kitchen cutting board in this retailer. Well, then I saw them over here. Oh, they must be big. And I saw them here and here too. And so if you don't make a big list of retailers, you won't find the manufacturers selling to the retailers, which is my main point. People get really confused when they're used to venturing. They think they're approaching a retailer. You're not approaching a Walmart or a Target. You're approaching the companies that sell in the Walmart or Target because usually house brands they're just reducing costs. They're not really innovating. Like a Walmart or Target house brand. That is a major point of confusion. That would be a good thing to bring up for
Oh,
people new to
interesting.
it. Yeah.
Oh, interesting. Well, so there are a bunch of case studies on the wall behind you, I think. What's an example of someone who did a really
I,
nice job, went through your process and was successful?
Yeah, I like this one. I have one on my desk here because I can tell how I made a mistake. I'm very right most of the time with licensing, but whenever I'm wrong, I love using it as an example. So this is a product that Ryan Bricker licensed. He's one of our members, and it's called the Whiskey Wedge, and he licensed it to Corksicle. And basically, it freezes ice at an angle here. So when you have ice cubes, there's more surface area and it will melt quicker in the whiskey. Okay. So, but if you freeze the ice at an angle, it won't melt as quickly and it doesn't dilute the whiskey, but it keeps it cold. So what this is just a glass and then you put water in it, then you put this plastic wedge in it, and then you stick it in the freezer, and then it will melt ice at an angle like that.
Smart.
And so where I was wrong about that, I said, Ryan, you're totally going to license that. That's really cool. I don't normally say that, but I guess I couldn't help in this case. I said, but it's kind of nichey, it's kind of nichey. I don't know how much it'll be. And he's like, yeah, I don't know. And he sold over 1 million. I think he's on his way to 2 million units now.
Cool.
And then he did the cigar glass, the same company, and it holds a cigar, and you can see there's like a little hole here to hold a cigar,
Got it.
you
Mhm.
know. So I just think that's a fun product, fun story. I think he's on his way to 2 million there.
Wow.
Um, Here's another one. This is a product, I'll keep it really short, from one of
Nice.
our students, and he presented another product to a company. They didn't like it. They told him what they were looking for, and he talked to Stephen and myself and said, "Hey, I don't. They want this other thing. I don't want to do that. This is what I want." And they're like, "What are you talking about? They're giving you exactly what they're looking for. Invent it." And he did, and he
Uh,
licensed this. So the moral of the story there is once you start getting into companies and they're open and they see you're creative, you can show them all sorts of stuff and they might tell you what their wish list is too. So there's the story there. This is another one that Dario Antonioni did, and it's a series of elastic straps that lets you create pockets anywhere. So you can instantly create a pocket, and it goes in a very interesting pattern. And so he was selling that. They had that in backpacks and binders and all sorts of stuff. And this is unusual. I've never seen this in 25 years. They were selling so much they wanted to buy them out at some point.
uh,
And that I've never had that happen before. So that
so
was unusual.
so they bought out the royalty stream, is that?
Yeah, they just bought it out so they didn't have to keep paying them royalties.
Yeah.
In a similar note there, I think it's very important. You never want to say, I want to sell you my patent or I want to sell it to you. You will never get what it's worth. You always want to get royalties as they sell units every quarter, every 3 months. You get paid your royalty. They'll imagine a company takes on a product, let's random number. Let's say they need to invest $110,000 to get up and running with. They haven't made a dime yet. And you're asking for a bunch of money up front. You're like, well, this is what it's worth. You will kill the deal almost every time. But if you're like, hey, I want to do this deal and you pay me as you're successful, you'll pay me a royalty. And let's say the product sells for 6 years, you're going to earn 100 times, 1,000 times more than whatever you would have gotten up front. This whole upfront money BS is garbage. Now, if somebody's been venturing it and they have inventory and they have injection molds and all that stuff, which you don't really want to do if your goal is to license, but if you've already done it and you're like, I'm going to do licensing now, yeah, you're going to get paid for that, of course. But if you're doing a licensing deal and you just have a prototype or something, get the money on the back end. Don't ask for a bunch of upfront money. Best way to kill a deal.
Okay, and we're talking about here in these examples, mostly consumer goods, which are easy for all of us to understand because we use
Yeah.
them. If I were just going to decide to invent something, I would probably think consumer goods because I have them in my kitchen and everywhere else. But what's kind of the range? What other types of technologies have you seen?
Yeah. Good. Yeah. The range is from a gag novel, a whoopee cushion, a gag
Yeah,
novelty gift to a medical device that saves lives. I don't know, it was about 10 months ago. I had a student of ours and he licenses CPAP device, for breathing at night. It goes on.
yeah,
And he had 8 patents because the medical device people, they're brutal with patents. They really want patents. But like one of my coaches licensed this little vegetable peeler in the shape of a worm. Kitchen companies, they don't really care. To think that you can't license a product without a patent is not at all true. But you're not going to license to a medical device company without a patent. I'm not going to quote numbers, but he did an absolutely insane deal. It was a lot of money. But so it could go from a whoopee cushion to automotive to garden to house to construction. It could be B2B products. It could be industrial products, or it could be a medical device in the case of this student. And we don't put that stuff up here, but anything is licensable if it has a benefit and the company will pay you a royalty. The areas that we kind of stay away from is software, apps. Everybody in their idea has an idea for an app, everybody and their grandmother, because we all use apps. But people don't understand the complexity of making an app. It's a lot of work. So the software geek kind of look at you when you got an idea. They kind of like what people think of these companies will look at when you have these other products that are up here. and they will do exactly what you think, but other companies don't. So they'll be like, "Oh, it's going to take 6 guys in a room a year to program that, and thanks for your idea." And they're not really into your idea, right?
Yeah.
Because it's a lot of development. But we don't see that in industrial products, consumer products, medical products. Like if you got a good product, you don't have to have fully developed it. You don't have to have it manufactured. You don't have to have sold a single one, you know?
Right. Yeah, and so medical devices, that sounds like it would be really difficult. Like these companies would be harder somehow,
Yes,
but is that
absolutely. Bigger,
okay?
bigger deal, bigger paycheck, harder to close. You need to have lockdown patents. Most industries don't care about that. Most industries, they're like, yeah, you got a provisional patent pending. We want that perceived protection. Yeah, okay. We'll give you an advance to help pay for the patent, or maybe you already file one. Inventors make that mistake and they file it beforehand. And they want the window dressing of it, but they're not obsessed with it like a medical device company. And then some could care less. Some are like, well, you can file a patent if you want. We don't care. We'll pay you a royalty. They're like, well, you can do that. What are they paying for? I mean, all these companies aren't out there to just like screw you over. I don't know why people think that.
Yeah.
I mean, you're not doing deals. Another point I'll make, I know I'm just rambling with a lot of
No,
points
that's
here.
great.
You're not going to do a deal with a Google, an Apple, a 3M, a Procter and Gamble. Now, I can count those what I call megacorps on these two hands that I would say that's true. You can do deals with huge companies. One of our students did a deal with Conair. That's a very large company. But when you're talking about a Google or an Apple or a 3M or a Procter and Gamble, too big, they just buy out smaller companies. But you can do a deal with a very big company that's in a major retailer.
And I will say, if you have a software technology, like we license at BOE, we license tons of software, but what we're doing is primarily licensing those to startup companies. Generally, if you have someone who's passionate about the software and who's going to do that work and create it, it ends up being a startup for us. But I'm sure there are exceptions, right?
Yeah, I think software is licensable. I think, for the layman, if you don't have a software background and you just have an idea for software,
Yeah.
April, one of our coaches that licensed this, she could have got a toy that was a caterpillar and then went and bought a vegetable peeler and put this in, and that's the prototype, right?
Mm.
But with software, the software geeks, they expect a lot more. You got to do a lot of development. And when we have a member that doesn't have a background in software, no.
Mm.
Now, if a member had a background in software, I think you could license it just like anything else. I think the software guys are so hard to get a hold of, though.
That's
They
true too.
really are. And usually people are like, I want to license this to Google. It's like, well, but if you want to license it to a app manufacturer that, or a software company that's got a lot of successful apps on Google, the Google Apps Play Store or the Apple App Store. I think that's possible, but I would say only for people that have a background in software. If you don't, I'd rather stick with this sort of thing or this sort of thing. Or we have engineers, people that are engineers and they're doing more technical things, but not software. We kind of just stay away from that. Not that you can't license software, you can.
Sure.
But we kind of stay away from it.
Okay. Well, so to kind of just as kind of a concluding topic area, you've addressed in your podcast like many of the problems that inventors face. You've had some great things to say about inventors who face fear and rejection. A lot of people are just going to be afraid to reach out to companies. Seems intimidating. What do you tell
Right.
them?
Yeah, you can get in just about anybody these days. It's easy. It's so much easier than it was before. It's easier and clearer than it ever has been. I mean, we've been around 25 years. Back in the day, we were having people make color copies and mail their cell sheets. And the big question was, hey, can I send a fax? And I'd be like, it's going to be black and white. It's not going to look, that's how long we've been doing this. It's not going to look that good. These days you got LinkedIn, you got phone, you got all sorts of systems. You can look up people's emails and phone numbers. You can get a hold of people. You can find out the names of the right people. It's amazing. LinkedIn is a great tool. But being able to get in is something that a lot of people shy away from. You think that these are big companies. Like we have a program called Bridging the Gap, where we bring on CEOs and marketing managers to talk to our students, and they realize like, oh, this is a person just like me, and they hear them talking about their job. So it's very encouraging. So don't ever feel like you're approaching a big company. You're approaching a person within that company. And if they want a good new idea that could help get them promoted, then, it's not so scary then. So it's very doable. We feel like, but you got to realize you might need to try to get in 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 times. You might need to try social media and then LinkedIn and then an email and then some phone calls, and you're just doing all these different techniques. And so it's one thing to have an idea, but it's another thing to do this work. Now, this work is a fraction of starting a business. Like if you're timid about reaching out to 20, 30 companies, you should not be starting your own business because you need to reach out to thousands of people, right?
Mhm.
But you do need to reach out. But then once you do a deal, you're dumping the whole thing on them, and you have to be willing to get a ton of no's. But here's the thing. It's all in how you frame what people think of as rejection. So let's say this vegetable peeler, this cute little product that April licensed is my product. And I reached out to 30 companies. 27 said no, three showed interest, two fell off when I did a deal with one. Well, the 29 out of 30 that I didn't do a deal with, I didn't get rejected. I made a relationship. They got back to me, said not a right match or something like that. And now what I got another kitchen product, I'll look at their product lines and I'll go, for this new product, 20 of these 30 are a right match, so I'm going to send to them. But I'm not just going to blast it out just because it's a kitchen product and waste their time when it's not a right match for their product line. So when you reach out on your first project, you're making relationships. You didn't get all this rejection. And I think new inventors are so focused on that one current product, they're not thinking about the future and they're not thinking like, well, I didn't get rejected. I just made a relationship. Good for me. And so that goes to another point. When you stay in an industry, very powerful. You start to make those relationships. It starts to become, after a year or two, less outreach and more like I already have their contact info. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. And LinkedIn is so amazing for connecting with people. If you're starting out and trying to reach the right person, is it the product manager within a large company, or who would you look for?
Product manager, marketing manager. We used to say never reach out to CEO. We have a whole different approach now.
Right.
CEO, marketing manager, product manager, usually 5 to 10 people in the company. See,
Yeah.
once somebody becomes your Superman or Superwoman, they got back to you, stop reaching out to more. But until then, reach out to all of them. See, but think about this. This is what people don't do, and this is why our students are successful when others aren't. If you have 30 companies, and you have 10 people you're reaching out to each company, that's 300 people you're reaching out to via email, phone, and LinkedIn. It's just a copy and paste operation. You don't need to be a sales schmuck. You don't need to give a big pitch. Your sell sheet or your video is giving the pitch for you. You're just asking to show it to them. So that puts a lot of people at ease going, oh, I don't have to pitch. Like people watch these stupid shows like Shark Tank,
Right.
and there's no reality to reality TV. That's not the way it works. And so, that's not the way it works. Now, with that said, the one page, 8.5 by 11 PDF, we call it a sell sheet, marketing piece, is not for the company. It's for their customer. And you need to be able to understand that in 6 to 10 seconds. When I see sell sheets from non-InventRight students, 95% of the time they're not good enough. 90% of the time they suck. They're terrible. And these are sometimes from people that are good marketers, but because it's their own product, they're kind of they don't really see it. It's like you don't want them to have to think about anything. You want them to instantly get it. Now they may not be interested in it, but people don't do good marketing. They don't have time for 15-page PowerPoints or long, huge videos or long emails. It's like a sell sheet they get in 6 to 10 seconds or a video that's under 60 seconds, preferably around 30, could be under 60, and no long rambling emails. If you got more stuff to show them, great. Get them on the hook first. That's a
Yeah.
big tip. They don't have time to look through all this stuff. I don't even think a website's good, used most of the time. They don't have time to go through your website. A one-page sell sheet, it's right there in front of them. A short video, it's right there in front of them. When people do have websites, I go, don't send them there. Send them this sell sheet. If you want to put the link in there to it, fine, but you don't need to create a website when you're licensing.
Yeah.
Nor
Yeah.
should you. You shouldn't be making that public disclosure. You're privately showing it to companies,
Right.
you know?
Yep. Yep. Clear, simple communication that respects someone's time is definitely the
Yeah.
way to go. So, well, great. Well, this is fantastic. This is like golden advice, Andrew. I hope people are listening to it. And this is similar, we're in a little different situation, licensing university technologies, but all the same principles apply, and really helpful. Thanks for taking the time
Absolutely.
to explain all this to us.
Absolutely. If anybody wants to visit us, you can visit inventright.com, and we got a whole bunch of free resources there, or just Google InventRight TV and we have a free YouTube show that can check that out. You know, one thing too that a lot of people don't realize during COVID, I did a year and a half of every Monday, or was it every Monday? I forget, once a week, I would do an hour of Q&A. So if you go Google InventRight TV, and then you go to our channel page, you click on the little InventRight icon, and then you click on live, there is an ungodly amount of free 1 hour Q&As there that your audience could take advantage of. And it's all free, and I don't hold back at all.
Yeah.
So they might want to check that out.
Yeah, and I've watched a lot of them. You can learn a lot of marketing information from those. And I gotta say also, I don't know any other organization like InventRight doing this. So thanks for what you're doing, Andrew, and really appreciate you sharing your wisdom with us today.
Thank you, Dave. I'm honored that you watch me ramble on YouTube.
All right. Hey, well, thanks a lot.
All right. Thank you.